I'm not sure if you were here in the opening, but I told a little bit about you. So they know you by now. So like I told about your cruise investments and your great exit, and also I showed a little clip from the social network movie. I mean, it wasn't you, that was the actor, but now they know you. As I mentioned in the opening, Divya is one of the, how can I mean, you tell the story. It's going to be much exciting, I guess. So,
sure.
Can I say one of the founders of Facebook, or should I say Facebook was something else, then became Facebook? I don't know how to explain it.
So I was the founder, the original founder of a company called Harvard Connection, which was a predecessor to Facebook. And the really quick story is that when I was I guess it would have been a junior, a third year at Harvard College, you know, I came up with this idea for a social network targeting universities. And you know, I was trying to build a team because I wasn't a programmer. I had done some programming, but I wasn't a web developer. And so, you know, I talked, you know, I reached out to friends of mine who were engineers, as well as folks who I thought could just help me build the business out. And the Winklevoss twins, who you guys also might recognize from the movie.
Yeah, the 2 meters tall.
A little bit more than 2 meters. They were my roommates, and so they were really excited to join the team. And Mark Zuckerberg was a second year when I was a senior in college. And one of my friend's brothers knew him because they were the same class year. And Mark was the 4th programmer that I had reached out to build what at that time was called HarvardConnection.com. And you know, eventually Mark launched Facebook, and we were sort of stuck and decided to pursue litigation against Facebook. I ended up working full-time in New York as a banker, so I kind of entered finance, and eventually met this guy in business school a couple of years after that. So, you know, and since then I've been running my own business. But this whole lawsuit and what was chronicled in the film was something that started in 2003 and didn't really end till 2012. So it was kind of an 8 to 9 year saga that, you know, just went on and on and on. And
I mean, yeah, when I was opening the conference, I mean, when I did my opening speech, I was telling the audience that if we start talking about the Facebook story, it's gonna take hours here, because like you have so many memories to tell and so many things to tell.
So many memories.
So, I said you'll be around. If someone wants to meet you in person, they can find you around. So, I mean, thanks for coming, by the way. It's great having you here. We are really happy that you're here now. And I'm turning to Sunny quickly, because like I want to tell a little bit about your backgrounds, first of all. Then obviously we're going to talk about what's next, because you two guys are like, you are experienced on many different areas, and you are currently doing investments. And actually, we didn't tell about SumZero, but you are running a social network with investors now. So we're going to talk about it as well.
Great.
So Sunny, I mean, that was a really big news, actually, the cruise automation deal with General Motors. And you were one of the first early investors in cruise. Can you tell us a little bit about that deal, and also, I don't know, maybe you want to tell about your company, Signia Ventures?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming here, first of all, today to be with us, and for having Divya and I here. Signia is a fund that I was on the founding team of about 4 years ago when we left business school in 2012. We're a $85 million second-time venture fund focused on seed and Series A investments. About 75% of our portfolio is in California, largely as a result of where we've started our own companies, where we've worked for tech companies, where we've worked as angel investors previously. So it's just the strength of the network. That's not to say that internationally isn't somewhere that we would be looking. Of course it is. That's partially why I'm here, is to meet with amazing Turkish entrepreneurs and European entrepreneurs. But Cruise kind of came through that network, that existing network that we already had, as often a lot of the best investments tend to. That's not to say that you don't, answer emails that come in cold, saying with a pitch, of course you do. But always the ones you'll pay most attention to are the ones that come through your existing network. Cruise was started by a young man named Kyle Vogt. Kyle was previously co-founder of another very successful startup named Twitch.
Wow.
Which had a phenomenal exit to Amazon after 2 or 3 short years. The prior predecessor having been Justin TV with Justin Khan. Kyle came into pitches. I was actually found the deal through a friend of mine who took over a very similar position to Kyle when he left. An actual friend through our business school network is how it got referred to me. And the pitch came in. Kyle was a dropout MIT roboticist, building robots. And within a few short months, he'd put together a self-driving car, autonomous vehicle kit that could be retrofit on top of an Audi A4, I believe. He comes to the office in Menlo Park, on a typical Monday. He pulls out a PlayStation 2 controller or PlayStation 3 controller, and he says, "Come outside." And he starts driving his car around the parking lot with no one in his driver's seat with a video game controller.
Is this like a normal Monday in Menlo Park? Is it like that?
It was definitely one of them.
Some friends just rings the door and says, "Get this joystick and drive my car."
There's a lot of amazing
and
innovation.
the founder is usually like founder of Twitch or kind of thing. So it's a regular Monday.
We were very fortunate to very serendipitous to meet Kyle. We committed the largest to close out his seed round that day. It was definitely a very popular seed round, but we were the largest institutional investor in that round.
And currently, Signia Ventures, you are interested with different areas like you do. You are actually personally an expert on VR, I guess, right?
Perpetual student, I guess, rather than expert. But one of the underlying technologies of Cruise, for example, was computer vision. So, the advanced cameras that are basically going to be pervasively everywhere, ubiquitously around us, being able to make sense of the world around you. You see this on Facebook now when, if I put a video up or a photo up of you guys right now, it would automatically recognize Divya's face, it would recognize your face. It's a very basic application of it. With Cruise, it's recognizing lane markers, it's recognizing street signs, it's recognizing how far people are away, all the rules of the road, on steroids for safety purposes with machine learning and artificial intelligence. So the underlying basis of that, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computer vision are a lot of the underlying tenets now of what we're interested in as it intersects with virtual and augmented reality.
So, quick question. Actually, it applies for both of you. You said that the founder of Cruise was also founder of Twitch. He sold his first company to Amazon, and now Twitch is acquired. Cruise is acquired by GM. And what's this success factor in entrepreneurship in startup, building a startup or whatever? Is it do you believe in the power of network, or I don't know, execution, or the idea? Which one is more important, you think?
You want to take a stab?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that.
Because you had the idea,
yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg executed that, and now it became Facebook. Yeah. Do you think that if he was just a developer and maybe had with a little stock option, will it be Facebook?
So, people always debate this question, idea versus execution. Here's why they're both really important. I think what you'll find is that the companies that do end up, especially in the venture capital community, if you want to raise money and you have a bad idea, or maybe I should rephrase that, if you have an idea that has a small addressable market, that's probably the number one criteria that VCs look at. I'm not even a VC, but having spoken to VCs, I would say that's probably the number one thing. Again, if you don't have the right plan, you're not even going to get to the stage where you've raised money, where you have the option to execute, right? You're almost you're not even at first base yet in some cases. So I think they're both very important. Obviously, in the United States, we have fairly strong intellectual property protection because people do value ideas. But at the same time, there are so many steps along the way that would ultimately constitute execution, without which you wouldn't be able to really build something successful. So, I mean, I think they're equally important, and usually there's a correlation. People who have, really good ideas are able to, get investors and ultimately build a team around them. So, you can't do one without the other. Sometimes you see cases where really bad ideas get funded. that happens a lot in Silicon Valley, I guess, and probably around the world. But I think probably one of the most important things with entrepreneurship is actually persistence and just general tenacity. Like I think, when you think about most entrepreneurs are not backed by venture capital, right? Most entrepreneurs bootstrap their businesses, or maybe they get, some funding from their friends and family. But most businesses are not VC-style businesses because VC-style businesses have a certain expectation associated with them that they need to reach $1 billion exit or some sort of large exit value in order to be interesting to the venture capitalist. But I think for a lot of businesses, that's kind of an unrealistic expectation. As long as the entrepreneur has that long-term mindset and they're not just looking to, be in and out, it takes a long time to build a business. I mean, I think when you think about what's the life cycle of a business, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you should be thinking about it in terms of decades, not years. Realistically, when you think of some of the greatest businesses in the world, they weren't built overnight. They were built over very long periods of time. And many of them were built by single owners, not necessarily large investment consortiums. So that, I think, comes down to patience and persistence more than anything. I don't even think it's intelligence, because there are a lot of people who I meet who, frankly, don't come across as like the smartest people who happen to be very successful. But they're all, I think, very hardworking and sort of, have that sort of ability to keep pushing themselves and keep honing their business models, keep improving the products, keep selling. So that's been my experience, at least.
I want to ask the same question to you, because like in your case, in Cruise case, let's say. By the way, I just want to remind you that Cruise Automation was a Y Combinator winter 2014, I guess.
Something like that.
Startup. And it was acquired by General Motors for over, you never announced the deal terms, but I guess it was over $1 billion. You don't want to say, yeah? Okay. But this is like a little funny rule of Webrazzi stage. At least you can just give us a tip, maybe. We are all Turkish here. No one will know in US.
The rumors were
right,
well founded.
Yeah, so it was like, we can say north of 1 billion, something like that. We can say. Anyway, it was a really good exit. And
great exit.
Like the founder was also founder of Twitch. The company came out of Y Combinator.
Yeah.
You were one of the early investors there. So when I was in Y Combinator demo day, I guess last year in March, I couldn't make it this August, but last March, there were a couple of autonomous car companies out there. So obviously, there is either something different with Cruise, or he knows the right people.
So building on what Divya said, I think I'll touch on infrastructure first. So no man is an island unto himself, right? You've got co-founders that are contributing very heavily. You've got an infrastructure of intellectual property protection afforded by the U.S. government. You've got amazing advisors, operators, investors, strategic corporations. Going back to when Silicon Valley was apple orchards. Genentech, IBM, all the way up to Facebook. Now you've got an amazing infrastructure and ecosystem of people that are really able to help and mentor and guide. Y Combinator is one of those examples. So I think when it comes to ideas, there are certain ideas that I put out there very publicly that we're interested in. We're very interested in VR and AR. We're very interested in continued innovation around autonomous vehicles. We're continuing to look at artificial intelligence and how it interacts with improvements around neural networks and deep learning. These are all areas that are interesting. There's a multitude of ideas, some good, some bad, but that's entirely subjective. Part of that's the privileged position that we're in to work with entrepreneurs that are so incredibly passionate and driven. Like Divya says, we're cheerleaders. We're lucky to be catch a ticket on a winning ride. At the same time, we are hands-on. We do get very close. We are all ex-operators in the fund, so we do try to really be more than just a Rolodex and more than just a check. But when it comes to ideas versus execution, I definitely gear towards the latter. You could read anything around Webrazzi or anything on TechCrunch, VentureBeat about good ideas. They're written about all the time. The real standout stories and the real stratospheric successes are those of a good confluence of idea, execution, mentorship, good team, appropriate funding environment, good macroeconomic environment. And there's so many factors that come into this, but none more important than the tenacity of the founder.
Yeah. So, well, it was good. I mean, we can use these little clips for like little courses, like little lessons to the entrepreneurs. It was really nice. So
well, automation is a really, I think, interesting space because the timing of this start, and actually timing is another thing that is sort of hard to put a finger on, but when you think about like the automobile space right now, when you think about what Tesla's doing, what Mobileye is doing, what every auto OEM is trying to invest more and more heavily in, I mean, automation is right up there in terms of
the wheels are turning.
The wheels are turning fast.
Detroit started to wake up.
Yeah, when you think about what Uber's doing, what every ride-sharing company is doing, there's a reason why I think GM was so aggressive about getting into the space.
Ford has been aggressive buying up companies in this space. BMW has its own ventures arm that is doing a lot of investment around not just autonomous vehicles, but also around transportation as a service. So the belief that all these guys...
Daimler is also doing something, right?
I beg your pardon?
Daimler?
Yeah. So the belief is that in the future, car ownership will actually be something that's a far lesser number than what it is now. McKinsey put out a study a while ago with their auto practice that talks about this. The idea is that, and even Elon Musk has said this publicly, that you'll have a fleet of cars that you can jump into on demand. Some of those will be completely level 4, fully autonomous, with no driver present. Others, you'll still have a driver there, but it'll be hands on the wheel, but it's actually driving itself. You've already started to see the Uber self-driving cars around San Francisco. And every other day I'm reading about Detroit or any of the other big auto manufacturers around the world making a new investment in something around computer vision, machine learning, to avoid collision avoidance or detection.
One last quick question. I mean, you had an idea for a social network for Harvard students, and then now you are running another social network for investors. So I bet you like the idea of social networking. So,
well, I like the idea of businesses that have network effects, and network effects are really important if you're going to build a business for the long run, just because it builds that barrier to entry that is important, when you're trying to compete with a lot of different players in a space. So, and you see these network effects. I mean, social networks are not just limited to online social networks. American Express is a social network of a different sort. Bloomberg is a social network of its own type. Even in the world of ride sharing, Uber is also a network effects business. So you sort of see this theme pop up in a lot of industries, but it's definitely an important aspect of building a competitive business.
So I'm not going to ask you this question then. So because I was going to say, if you had just one credit and you had to choose just one area to invest in, which area would you invest? I think you would say something related to networks again, and I guess. And yours, this is my bet. I think you would say VR or maybe something similar to that.
Virtual reality, augmented reality, and computer vision.
Yeah, this is your bet. This will be your bet. You would bet your 1 credit to that one, right?
Oh, if that credit is to be determined over within the next 5 to 10 years, yeah.
You?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm very interested in energy.
Really?
Yeah, I think, and that's not just because of the political sort of state of the world right now. I've just always been very environmentally conscious.
Well, it's interesting. I mean,
yeah, so
it's interesting to hear that from you. We were expecting something like AI, VR kind of things.
Well, that stuff is happening, and you know, I'm all for that. I think you know, in the U.S., like there's fairly minimal adoption of solar energy, and but I think the potential is huge to completely transform the U.S. energy grid, and also around the world. Like in India, for example, energy is a real problem. You know, there's no reliable source of energy. A lot of people have generators in their homes, but so there's a lot of opportunity to I think make a huge impact on the lives of people through just better use of renewable resources. You know, AI and VR and all these things that are being heavily invested in are also extremely exciting. I think what's kind of frightening is what technology is going to do to existing industries with car sharing. You know, the whole strategy of Uber and Lyft and a lot of these companies is to basically displace drivers, right? So they're in London, it's kind of a prestigious thing if you're a cab driver, right? I mean, those cab drivers take exams to become cab drivers. In 10 years, 20 years, they might not have jobs. You know, what does that mean for society? What industries will replace the ones that we have now due to automation? I think automation is one of the most exciting yet frightening sort of examples of technology disrupting, improving and disrupting people's lives. So we'll see.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being a part of Webrazzi Summit.
Thank you so much.
It was really nice having you here. I mentioned you last night at the dinner. We have a startup launch. There are 50 startups with demo desks there. I mean, if you want to take around and maybe you can get some ideas about what's happening in the market. Yeah, you can just check it out as well. They will be happy to see you there as well.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Arda.
Thanks, Divya. Thanks.